Hello, welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show. I am your humble host, Willy Bragg. And first of all, before we get started, I would like to say once again to please like, comment, and share anything that I have here on this channel, this video commentary, or any other that's of relevance, whatever purposes or nefarious reasons you may have to do so. So, as you know, October 30th, just a few short days ago, Sunday, the election in Brazil. And this election, it was the second round. Earlier, I think it was like October 9th. I think it was in early October. I think it might have been October 9th. I'm not sure now. I remember when it happened at the time. But it suffice to say that there was an election, first round of elections, or was it in September? The second round was on the 30th of October. That's the important thing. That was the that ultimately decided for the people of Brazil who was going to be would it be the re-election of Jair Bolsonaro, or would it mean the return of Lula DaSilva? And this election, the candidacy, the campaign between Lula DaSilva and Jair Bolsonaro, basically, this is not just your blue-red divide like it is in America. I mean, which is really just. The country is going to be brought down by bullshit politics here in the United States, bullshit culture war narratives. There's more meaning to the left-right divide in Brazil. And what you got, basically, theoretically, Lula is sort of fitting the spot of not Joe Biden, but what a Bernie Sanders campaign would have been like. And Jair Bolsonaro is filling in a spot of what people here in America, whether you love them for it or hate them for it, what the projection, the really exaggerated right-wing positions, and he is too right-wing. I'm talking about Donald Trump. Whatever is shitty about Donald Trump, multiply that by 100 with Jair Bolsonaro. Jair Bolsonaro is probably closer to a Ron DeSantis of Florida than he is a Donald Trump. Imagine, that's probably a better comparison. Imagine Bernie Sanders versus like a better Bernie in Brazil. Brazil's better Bernie versus Ron DeSantis, who's Portuguese. I'm talking about Jair Bolsonaro, who is just as bad as, they're equally bad. Well, point I'm trying to say is that Lula DaSilva defeated Bolsonaro. This is a wonderful day. October 30th was a wonderful day for democracy. Democracy will be returning to Brazil. And what democracy did exist during the Bolsonaro years, there were checks and balances in the government. He was not able to try to turn the country into a dictatorship as was his desires. And he has stated quite clearly over the years that dictatorship is what he prefers. And there is no question about it that if he had it his way, dictatorship was going to be. And we're talking about suppression of dissent. We're talking about torture. We're talking about silencing of political opponents. I mean, you name it. Everything that was despicable about Augusto Pinochet of Chile, you could apply that to Jair Bolsonaro. So let's talk about Lula for a moment, because everything is going to connect with Glenn Greenwald. Lula DaSilva was elected in 2002, the Workers' Party candidate, a trade unionist, and he, when he came into power, he had the unusual gift. He had the unusual gift of not just turning the Brazilian economy around, and he did. He got the economy back on its feet. He had a lot of its debt paid off. He actually expanded anti-poverty programs that have actually gotten people out of poverty and brought people into the middle class. And Brazil was climbing up economically. It was climbing up into the world. And I believe it's it's like the fourth largest economy in the world, I'm hearing. But anyway, Brazil was climbing up. And there were some trumped up charges in the last few years of corruption that put him in prison. And in 2018, Bolsonaro became president, was elected president. So for the last 4 years, the country has suffered under Bolsonaro. Glenn Greenwald, who lives in Brazil, he lives in Brazil. There is a Glenn Greenwald connection. That's obviously because for a lot of people in America, Glenn Greenwald is very controversial. He's very controversial in Brazil too. His husband, David Miranda, is a member of the Brazilian Congress, so that's why he lives in Brazil currently. So you would think he lived in the United States when you see him on TV all the time, and you see him on the internet on these various programs, but he's doing that from mostly Brazil. There's been accusations going around that he is somehow very sympathetic to Bolsonaro, which is the furthest thing from the truth. I don't know how. And there are many shitlibs, and there are even some well-meaning leftists that have bought into this myth, this lie that Glenn Greenwald is somehow, turned right wing to the point that he's even siding with Bolsonaro, Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil. While it's not true that he's turned pro-Trump, it may be closer to being true than Bolsonaro of Brazil, but it's not even true here in the United States that he's pro-Trump. He was a Bernie Sanders supporter in 2016. Do not know where he stood in the 2020 election. I know he's not a fan of Joe Biden. Does not mean that he was pro-Trump. But suffice to say, a lot of the people, a lot of the resistance people, a lot of the resistance of the vote blue, no matter who crowd, the one who suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, that are so obsessed about Russia this and Russia that. I know I'm saying this in spite of what's going on between Russia and Ukraine. They have been smearing him, saying that he's a Russian plant. Because things like he's dismissing the Russian connection between the connection between Putin and Trump, which there was no collusion at all. So and so everybody's been throwing all that. Like, he's soft on white supremacy because he talks to Tucker Carlson, like Russell Dubler, kind of sarcastically in tone in the program Due Dissidence, which I highly recommend. Due Dissidence, hosted by Keaton Weiss and Russell Dubler. Great online left program, fastest growing, one of the more fast growing programs on the online left. Pulling a plug out for this guys. Due Dissidence. Do follow them on Twitter. Do follow them on YouTube and any other area where they have a platform. Suffice to say, they did a great story on why the liberals are now attacking Glenn Greenwald. And so, I mean, and the thing about it is that it makes no sense for Glenn Greenwald to be pro-Bolsonaro in any way, shape, or form. The Bolsonaro government has been doing everything they could to try to arrest both Glenn Greenwald and David Miranda, who is Glenn Greenwald's husband. They view them as troublemakers. They view them as communists, inciting political unrest or whatever they want to say and everything. And they're considered the enemy of the state under the current Bolsonaro government, or soon to be the former Bolsonaro government. I do not know when there was a swearing-in ceremony or what have you. So I'm assuming that there is still a Bolsonaro government going on right now as we speak until Lula becomes president or is sworn in as president. But the thing about it is this with Glenn Greenwald. It makes no sense that a man who's been fighting a man who's fought for civil liberties in the United States, who was fighting against the Bush-Cheney regime's narratives and plans of surveillance against the war, the Bush-Cheney foreign policy doctrine. Somebody who's been a supporter, Julian Assange, an advocate for Julian Assange, an advocate for Ed Snowden, someone who worked on behalf of Chelsea Manning, to go and call this person wrong here in the United States, let alone say he's working with Bolsonaro of Brazil. He broke out a story where it was proven that it was trumped up charges against, pardon the term using trumped up charges, but against Bolsonaro, against Lula, that they had to free him from prison. And Lula DaSilva is a free man today because of Glenn Greenwald. And Lula DaSilva have actually thanked Glenn Greenwald for being a free man. Glenn Greenwald is the reason why Lula DaSilva is president of Brazil today, or will be sworn in as the president of Brazil. It makes no sense to accuse Glenn Greenwald of some of the things that people are accusing him of, especially down in Brazil with this Bolsonaro thing. We're talking about a secular Jewish gay man who is married to a black socialist, a member formerly of the Socialism and Liberty Party, now with the Brazilian Labor Party in the Brazilian Congress. We're talking about That's who we're talking about. It makes no sense. They have to have in their home in Rio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, security surrounding their home out of fears of the right wing trying to kill them. The right wing have been trying to, they're in constant danger of their lives by the right wing in Brazil. The right wing hates Glenn Greenwald. The right wing hates David Miranda. I don't know, I don't know why people, I guess when Trump got elected in 2016, and I guess that there was that notion of, well, yes, you're not 100% with the resistance, and if you don't 100% say that Trump is a piece of shit all the time, you're somehow sympathetic to Trump. And that's not the case. That is not the case. Trump was bad news in many, many policy matters. He appointed a lot of crony core capitalists in his cabinet. Very typical of Republicans. A lot of deregulation, tax cuts to the wealthy, and things of that nature. Now on the foreign policy question, Glenn Greenwald, I will agree with Glenn Greenwald that in some areas, not all areas, but in some areas, there were some pockets of areas where there was mild improvement. Not because Donald Trump was so benevolent and wonderful. It was because it was friction between the resistance, friction with never Trumper Republicans in his cabinet and with his own people. And because of the chaos between the deep state and chaos with the Trump people and chaos with the liberal establishment at the time, the mainstream liberal establishment, nothing could actually be done in regard to foreign policy. And when America do nothing in regard to foreign policy, or next to nothing, or as close to nothing as possible in foreign policy, and the world's a little bit more peaceful. So if by accident, it's not that he was wonderful. It's not because he was Noam Chomsky on foreign policy. It's because with regard to Donald Trump, it was because of the unusual circumstances of people and him and his political opponents and all the chaos it ensued within this country in the last 4 years. Probably the only time anything chaotic happened where there is a positive outcome. And that meant that the United States becoming a little bit less aggressive. There were areas where he still, did evil regarding to Donald Trump, murdering Qasem Soleimani in Iran. And I can almost guarantee you that Glenn Greenwald was opposed to that. Or the United States trying to bring down Venezuelan government of Nicolas Maduro. And I can almost guarantee you, I'm 99.9% sure Glenn Greenwald is opposed to that. So, and moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which Glenn Greenwald in American context cannot be considered part of the right, the modern right, or the normie right, at least, because Glenn Greenwald is a strong critic of what is called Israeli apartheid. Ben Shapiro have called him a self-loathing anti-Semite, which is ridiculous. Glenn Greenwald is not a self-loathing anti-Semite, but that's Ben Shapiro being Ben Shapiro. So, whatever. The point I'm trying to make is that Glenn Greenwald is basically an old school civil libertarian. That's his politics has kind of remained where it was at, where ACLU style leftists were at 20, 25, 30, 40, 45, 50 years ago. And, that today, that position, too far left for the right even today, but for the modern day left, it's not considered woke enough. Gosh, I know that feeling. I know what it's like to be considered too woke for the right wing, but not woke enough for the left. I know that feeling. So there's a little bit of empathy there in that regard. Now, do I agree with Glenn Greenwald on everything? Absolutely not. Glenn Greenwald's wrong on his opposition toward trans women in sports. He's absolutely wrong on that. He was wrong on the Citizens United decision a decade ago, declaring corporations a human being. He was definitely wrong on that. And I think that maybe some conservatives are realizing how wrong that was. So, it came back to bite them for a change, their wrongful policies. But, the thing about it is that there is this Glenn Greenwald derangement syndrome that's really ridiculous. And again, I don't agree with Glenn Greenwald and everything. And people say, well, he's not ever been a leftist. Well, Glenn Greenwald's ever claimed to have been a leftist. Glenn Greenwald has never said, I'm a leftist. And you could say that he was perhaps, and still is what you would call an old school, middle of the road liberal. He's never professed himself to be a socialist or a communist or a revolutionary anarchist or anything of that nature. If I have to decide what he is ideologically in that regard, I would say he's a relatively normie liberal Democrat in many ways who doesn't feel welcome in the modern Democratic Party because of what they did to him. I don't think he's a Republican. I could see him being libertarian, and I could see him not voting at all. And I could see him voting green, but I'm not Glenn Greenwald. So you'll have to ask Glenn Greenwald about that if he wants to disclose the information on how he votes, either in Brazil or the United States. I'm just giving you my take on where I think Glenn Greenwald will stand. And so I just needed to set the record straight. And unfortunately, there are people that I like and respect, and some of them will tell me to fuck off when they see this video. If I thought that Glenn Greenwald was everything that some people on the left and some of the shitlibs claim that he is, I would absolutely be opposed to him too. But no, I don't see that about Glenn Greenwald at all. Again, I don't give a shit that Glenn Greenwald goes on Tucker Carlson. I don't like to listen to Tucker Carlson. I disagree with Tucker Carlson. Believe me, I disagree with Tucker Carlson I mean, he's occasionally correct on some foreign policy shit. That's about as much as it goes. And that's why he goes on Tucker Carlson on foreign. Him and Jimmy Dore go on Tucker Carlson because they agree on things like Julian Assange and foreign policy. Okay, stop clock gets the right time twice a day. But on just about everything else, Tucker Carlson is as wrong can be. But I don't give a damn that he goes on Tucker Carlson, goes on Fox News in general. But people go there. Oh, there's Glenn Greenwald. There's Jimmy Dore going on Fox News. Oh, going on Tucker Carlson. How dare they? But Nomiki Konst can go on Fox News and even go on Tucker Carlson. I think she went on Tucker Carlson, is my understanding. And nobody says jack shit about it. And I'm going to go and trigger some people when it comes to Nomiki Konst. She is to the right of Glenn Greenwald. Nomiki Konst is to the right of Jimmy Dore, and she is to the right of Glenn Greenwald. There, I said it. So, but anyway, suffice to say, Nomiki Konst, nudge, left, don't push. I remember. But anyway, suffice to say, yeah, people, come on now. Really? Really? You're going to go smear, and, he's not the only one. They even smear, the whole Bernie Sanders thing. I'm moving beyond Bernie Sanders at this point. I really am. I'm not going to go like, well, fuck Bernie Sanders. I'm not going to ever do that but I am moving beyond Bernie Sanders. But still, I know people like some shitlibs still insist today that Bernie Sanders is some kind of right winger. There are people out there that think that Bernie Sanders is a right winger. So this is what I'm getting at. That when people who are on the left, whether they're nominally on the center left or even a more radical left, are being called right wingers. It's really fucking infuriating. It really is. And what was considered left-wing positions 10, 15 years ago is now considered a right-wing position. When you got someone like Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney who were the toast of Rush Limbaugh 15 years ago, and you got people like Rachel Maddow, and you got shitlibs saying how wonderful they are today. Hell no, Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney are wonderful. Hell no, Rob Reiner. Hell no. I will never accept that. I will never embrace Liz Cheney or Dick Cheney. If Michael Stivic was a real life character, I mean, he would say to Rob Reiner, "Hey, fuck you." So anyway, that I just had to say my piece about that. So I did. I had to say my piece about that. So anyway, let's see here on the chat line. We have Go Start. Ukrainian First Lady Zelenska ordered a Gray Zone Web Summit cancellation. I heard about that, and I'm gonna tell you, I am so tired of the Ukraine government giving ultimatums and demands to the U.S. government. I mean, they're trying to get us into fucking World War III and giving ultimatums, telling the U.S. government to put certain politicians and certain journalists on blacklists, like to put, again, I had some problems with Tulsi Gabbard now, but putting her on the blacklist, or putting Glenn Greenwald on a blacklist, or putting Rand Paul on a blacklist. I mean, how dare Ukraine would do that? When they got fucking Nazis in the Ukraine. And and what's so funny about the shitlibs, it went from punch a Nazi in 2016 to embrace Nazis in the Ukraine, but deny that they're Nazis in the Ukraine. What the fuck? What the fuck? It's just crazy. It's a crazy world we live in today in that regard. It really is. But anyhow, I going to say that if you all like what you heard, please press like and comment. And if you disagree with what I have to say, we'll comment anyway. We'll have a conversation. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we are in fact the muckrakers of our time. And of course, remember to always reject corporate media. Always do that, because they have absolutely nothing to offer. And until next time, just remember to always get a second opinion when it comes to what they hand us in the media. So I will conclude by saying to y'all, music. Take care. We'll talk to y'all next time very soon. Promise.